Hello, you're listening to E-Bible Fellowship's new open forum excerpts, and now we present the following excerpt.
Welcome to our question and answer program. Please go ahead with your call.
Hey, Chris, how you doing?
I'm doing well, by God's grace. Thank you. Please go ahead.
I had a question. You've answered this question a couple times, I would say very well. If you'll just give me a second to frame it for you, I might try to go a slightly different angle. It's about the Textus Receptus. And I was wondering, do you know how were those letters compiled? At what time period in the New Testament were they compiled? And from a historical perspective, did you guys learn anything about that, kind of the historical mechanics of it? And one last thing, just to tee it up for you, and I'll let you go, is in the Old Testament, it seems to be a bit more clear in the sense that Israel was a people of God. He gave them his word. He obviously gave them the ability to protect it and to keep it safe, to know exactly what books to keep, to include. Obviously it did not include the book of Enoch or the book of, I think Jasher might have been one that's mentioned in the Old Testament. So in the New Testament, do we have a similar historical understanding? Not that it would be perfect, but to be able to answer someone when they ask, okay, these were compiled by the early church. The church made this determination, obviously being guided fully by Christ. Did you understand where I'm going with that?
Yeah, I don't think that's the way to approach it. In seminary, they touch on it, but it's not much information. And you have a lot of people out there that they worry, they're concerned, and some people just trying to find fault. They see all the problems. I mean, when you look at the church, as the church at the time of the end, it isn't really the best, prism to look at the church throughout the church age, although the church always had problems from the beginning, as we see in Revelation 2 and 3. But there were men, and we know from Christ's parable of wheat and tares, Satan was active in the churches, sowing tares amongst the wheat. And they became majorities. They became most of the congregation. They became most of the rulers, the pastors, the elders, the deacons, and therefore when church councils are being held, you had unsaved, you had Satan operating. And even though Christ is in the midst of the church, the candlestick is lit over the course of the church age, but you can see that there will be no convincing people. They will say, well, Rome got involved, or the Catholic Church got involved, and you can't trust the Bible. You can't trust the Bible because you can't trust men, and men were in the church. You can't trust ungodly men or unsaved men, and there were numbers of them in the church. And to add to that, these things happened a long time ago, and the information we can know is also delivered to us by men. And you could have men who want to sort of lift up, exalt the idea that the church is the one who compiled the Bible, compiled the Greek New Testament. The church is the one who made the determinations, because they have such a high view of the church. And this would be some of the church fathers that lived centuries ago, back at maybe the 3rd century, 4th century. And so when you're doing your research to try and find out, well, what really happened? How was the Bible really put together? It's more frightening than anything. It doesn't give any comfort. I never really got any comfort from that. But what do we do? What do we do? How do we trust that the Bible we have is perfect? I think this whole idea of how the Bible's put together, In the churches, they have little to no problem, many theologians and church leaders, with allowing slight error. Yes, we have difference in this verse over here in the Old Testament, and this verse over here, different chapters and books. And over here it says 4,000. Over here it's a different number. Scribal error. Scribal, but the Bible on all the big points you can trust. Just flippantly, they'll give up that ground where you no longer have a holy Bible. What does God tell us in Ecclesiastes when you're making the ointment of the apothecary, and a fly comes buzzing and nose dives into the ointment, that it's ruined. A
Right.
dead fly sends forth a stinking savor. You've altered the chemistry that God determined. It was according to his commandment. This is how you make it. And you don't add more, you don't add less, and you certainly don't add a dead, stinking fly. And
Right.
and
Chris,
right
excuse me.
away, it's ruined. It's ruined. Well, I'll say this, and then you can say something else. And that's the problem with the idea, and they present this idea with the manuscripts. They try to say, well, we really can't know. We have a majority text, but we really can't know on certain things this reading, and it's even in Bibles when they put their notes, and they say now the some of the older, more reliable manuscripts put it this way, and it's casting doubt upon the word of God. They are making this holy book unholy. They're causing it, as it were, to send forth a stinking savor. And there is a way we can, and I'll go to a verse that shows us we can trust the Bible wholeheartedly, and we don't have to know any of this. And I don't get into discussions with people like, say, if you were a caller calling up and saying, well, back in this council of the church determined to add this book and cast out that book, and so you're trusting the church. And I wouldn't even get into it. I don't have to get into it. I don't have to know what councils concluded and books they added or books they threw out. And it's a lie that the church was in control of the Bible. God watched over the Bible. But go ahead.
No, of course, and that's not the point that I'm making. What I'm saying is that's why I brought up the Old Testament first, because obviously Israel was involved in compiling the Old Testament. It wasn't that they did it any more than Paul or Jeremiah wrote the text. They were inspired by God. But I'm just saying that obviously they were put there by God to put the manuscripts together. Let's just, again, start with the Old Testament. So nobody really has a problem, right? I mean, when Jesus walked the earth in the flesh and he was in the temple, that canon at that point would have existed in the way that we understand the Old Testament. And we understand that the Jews were there, they put it together. So obviously, I'm just saying, I'm not defending the church, I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying in the New Testament, there had to be a similar mechanics of God gave people the ability to get the right books, protect the right books, and there had to be a decision made at some point. It doesn't mean that the church made the decision, of course not, any more than Paul didn't decide what to write in the book of Romans. But they were there by the grace of God, by the will of God, to make that decision. Those mechanics must have existed.
Well, yeah, but we can't trust any of that. We can't trust any. Here, let me read this verse, because this really solves it for me. And it tells us who put the Bible together and who protected it. It's in Psalm 12 and verses 6 and 7, where it says, the words of Jehovah are pure words, as silver tried in a furnace of earth, purified 7 times. Seven's the number of perfection. Pure, purified, 7. Thou shalt keep them, O Jehovah. Thou shalt preserve them from this generation forever. God is the one
Yeah.
in the Old Testament. God is the one in the New Testament. He kept his word. He preserved his word. And yes, he would work through people. He would give, as they're trying to put together the King James Bible, he would give guidance and make sure that they use the Textus Receptus. He would keep the Greek text, the received text, perfect, and they would translate into the King James and so forth. And yeah, men were involved. Men, they're the minor players. They're the minor players. They shouldn't get any attention. And first of all, we don't know exactly how God did it. We know God did it. We know that He safeguarded His word without fail. And
I agree.
and that's all we need to know. As far as getting into church history, well, yeah, if someone wants to do that, they can do it and they can look it up. But it's church history is just like secular history. How do you trust it? How do you trust it? We may read a book, Fox's Book of Martyrs, and we're told this is how this is. And did it happen that way? Maybe it did. Maybe it's a little exaggerated in some cases. Or we're reading an account from you had your Sadducees and your Pharisees in Israel, and in the New Testament you have people have this one point of view on baptism, people have another point of view, and they're all writing. They're all writing, and so they can be slanted. There could be biases. There can be, problems with perspective concerning how things happen. And we have the perfect Word of God that we can occupy with, and we know that our study, wherever we turn in the Bible, it's true. This is true.
Thanks for watching. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notifications. That way you don't miss any upcoming videos.